The Stanley Cup Final is where hockey legends are made, where every shift, every save, and every goal can echo through history. The air is thick with anticipation, and the weight of the moment is felt by everyone in the arena and watching around the world. In 2025, the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers found themselves locked in a battle for the ages. Two teams with contrasting styles and burning ambitions, each desperate to etch their names onto the cup. The Panthers brought relentless forechecking and airtight defense, suffocating their opponents with discipline and grit, refusing to give an inch in their own zone. Meanwhile, the Oilers countered with explosive offense, dazzling speed, and a burning desire to end Canada's decades-long cup drought, igniting hope in their loyal fans. After splitting the first two games, Game 3 in Edmonton became a pivotal turning point. The tension inside Rogers Place was almost suffocating, every fan on edge, knowing what was at stake. Every play felt monumental, every shot and save magnified by the roar of the home crowd, desperate to push the Oilers ahead and seize momentum in the series. But Florida, unfazed by the hostile environment, stuck to their disciplined system, determined to frustrate Edmonton's stars and silence the crowd with their poise under pressure. The series had already become a war of attrition, with both teams trading punishing physical blows and making constant tactical adjustments, neither side willing to back down. As the puck dropped for Game 3, the stakes couldn't have been higher. A 2-1 series lead hung in the balance, and every player knew the outcome could define their legacy. The animosity between the teams was obvious, with tempers flaring and the line between hard-nosed hockey and outright hostility blurring as the intensity reached a fever pitch. Game 3 would be remembered not just for the score, but for the chaos, the raw emotion, and the unforgettable moments that erupted on the ice, leaving fans breathless. This was the night the Stanley Cup Final transformed into a true battle for the soul of the game, a night when heroes were forged and the spirit of hockey burned brighter than ever. From the opening face-off, the Panthers executed their plan flawlessly, coming out with energy and focus that set the tone for the entire game. Their attention to detail was evident in every shift as they stuck to their structure and refused to give Edmonton any breathing room. They suffocated Edmonton's offense, closing passing lanes and forcing mistake after mistake. The Oilers, known for their high-powered attack, found themselves stifled and unable to generate quality chances. Florida's relentless forecheck pinned the Oilers deep, creating turnovers and keeping the play in Edmonton's zone for long stretches. The Panthers' forwards pressured the puck, forcing Edmonton's defense into rushed decisions and costly errors. Scoring came from all over the lineup. Marchand, Reinhart, and Ekblad each found the net, showing Florida's depth and versatility. The Panthers' ability to roll all four lines kept the Oilers guessing and unable to key in on any one threat. By the second intermission, the Panthers had built a commanding lead, and frustration was boiling over on the Oilers' bench. Players exchanged heated words, searching for answers as the game slipped away. Rodriguez and Verhaeghe piled on, making it 5-1 and exposing Edmonton's defensive breakdowns. The Panthers capitalized on every opportunity, punishing the Oilers for every lapse in coverage. Florida's defense blocked shots and limited the Oilers to low-danger chances, while their goalie stood tall when needed. Every time Edmonton tried to mount a comeback, the Panthers' defensive wall held firm. The Oilers, unable to break through, grew desperate and started to play a more physical, confrontational game. Their frustration boiled over into scrums and hard hits, trying to shift the momentum by any means necessary. The Panthers, never ones to back down, matched the intensity, setting the stage for the chaos to come. Florida's players responded with their own physicality, refusing to be intimidated. The scoreboard told the story of a blowout, but the real battle was just beginning. Tensions simmered as the clock wound down, with both teams knowing the series was far from over. Florida's dominance was the perfect backdrop for the eruption that would define Game 3, leaving fans and players bracing for what would come next. With under 10 minutes left in the third period, the tension inside the arena was palpable. Every fan could feel the pressure mounting as the clock ticked down, and the stakes of the Stanley Cup Final weighed heavily on both teams. The Panthers were up 5-1, and frustration among the Oilers was reaching a breaking point. Their dreams of a comeback were slipping away, and the weight of disappointment was written all over their faces. Suddenly, Oilers center Trent Frederic snapped, In a moment of pure frustration, he delivered a vicious two-handed cross-check to Sam Bennett's back, shattering his stick and instantly igniting chaos on the ice. Bennett spun around, and in a heartbeat, every player on the ice found a partner, squaring off and ready to drop the gloves. The tension that had been simmering for 3 games finally erupted. The officials were powerless to stop the chaos. Their whistles were ignored as the players' tempers boiled over, and the rivalry reached a fever pitch. Edmonton's attempts to intimidate the Panthers had failed, and now their discipline was gone. The Oilers, desperate to change the momentum, only found themselves spiraling further out of control. That cross-check was the breaking point, a desperate act that unleashed a full-scale line brawl, with every player on the ice throwing punches and grappling for dominance. While Florida stayed composed and focused, Edmonton unraveled completely, their frustration spilling over into outright anarchy and chaos. The officials' whistles were drowned out by the deafening roar of the crowd and the unmistakable sound of gloves and sticks crashing to the ice. Punches flew, tempers flared, and Game 3 descended into a wild melee that would be talked about for years to come, a moment that would define this series. This was no longer just a hockey game. It had become a battle of pride, emotion, and raw willpower, with both teams refusing to back down. The Stanley Cup Final had reached its boiling point, and the world was watching as history unfolded on the ice. Amid the chaos, one fight stole the spotlight. Panthers Jonah Gadjovich versus Oilers Darnell Nurse. The two heavyweights traded punishing blows, the crowd roaring as they slugged it out in a throwback to old-school hockey. All around them, other players paired off. Greer versus Ekholm, Schmidt versus Brown, Kulikov versus Arvidsson. Every skater on the ice was involved, jerseys were pulled, fists flew, and the ice was littered with equipment. Even after the main fights ended, tempers kept flaring, with Tkachuk and Klingberg jawing and more players joining the fray. The officials struggled to restore order, but the damage was done. The Gadjovich-Nurse bout was a microcosm of the series. Edmonton's frustration against Florida's unyielding resolve. Both fighters collapsed in exhaustion. Their battle settled for now. The brawl overshadowed the game itself, leaving a trail of gloves and helmets across the ice. This was a Stanley Cup Final moment for the ages. When the dust settled, the officials faced a mountain of penalties to sort out. The score sheet overflowed with infractions, 140 penalty minutes, making it the 4th most penalized game in Stanley Cup Final history. Edmonton racked up 85 minutes, Florida 55, as both teams sent players to the box and the locker room. Gadjovich, Nurse, Greer, Bennett, Ekholm, Frederic, Kane, and Wallman were all ejected for their roles in the chaos. The benches were decimated, forcing coaches to scramble lines for the meaningless final minutes. The Oilers' parade to the penalty box handed Florida a 2-man advantage, a 5-on-3 power play. Edmonton's attempt at intimidation had spectacularly backfired, sealing their fate. The Panthers had not only dominated on the scoreboard, but now had a chance to add insult to injury. The night's pandemonium was now etched in Stanley Cup lore. Edmonton's plan was clear: use brute force to rattle the Panthers and disrupt their structure. But Florida thrived on physicality, absorbing hits and sticking to their disciplined system. The Oilers' aggression only led to sloppy play, turnovers, and costly penalties. Florida stayed patient, drew penalties, and capitalized on the power play. The third-period brawl was the final proof that Edmonton's strategy had failed. Instead of sparking a comeback, the chaos handed Florida a 5-on-3, which they quickly converted. The Oilers had played right into the Panthers' hands, unraveling under pressure. Florida's identity, tough, relentless, and composed, prevailed, while Edmonton was left searching for answers. Down 2-1 in the series, the Oilers now faced questions about their discipline and game plan. The lesson was clear: you can't outmuscle a team that lives for the fight. Lost in the chaos was Florida's clinical 6-1 victory, a showcase of depth and discipline. Marchand opened the scoring. Reinhart and Ekblad followed, and the Panthers' balanced attack overwhelmed Edmonton. Rodriguez and Verhaeghe added to the tally, while Florida's defense stifled the Oilers' stars. The final blow came after the brawl. Bennett, the target of the cross-check, scored on the 5-on-3 power play. It was poetic justice and a statement that Florida would not be bullied. Edmonton's lone goal came from Corey Perry, a brief spark in an otherwise dismal night. the Oilers' top guns were neutralized, unable to generate their usual high-danger chances. The 6-1 score reflected total domination. Florida looked every bit the champion. The Panthers' relentless pressure and depth made them nearly impossible to defend. For Edmonton, it was a humbling defeat on home ice. After the chaos, frustration boiled over in the Oilers' locker room. Players criticized the officiating, claiming Florida got away with more physical play. Trent Frederic, who started the brawl, hinted at bias, while Evander Kane was even more direct in blaming the referees. The Oilers' complaints revealed a team rattled by Florida's relentless style and their own inability to adapt. The NHL reviewed the brawl, but issued only a fine to Jake Wallman for unsportsmanlike conduct. The fallout put the referees under a microscope for Game 4, with both teams on edge. Florida, meanwhile, stayed cool and confident, unfazed by the drama. The Panthers held a firm 2-1 series lead, while the Oilers faced mounting pressure to regroup. The stage was set for a pivotal next chapter in the Stanley Cup Final. With Game 4 looming, the question was clear. Would the series spiral into more chaos or return to pure hockey? The Oilers, now desperate, had to decide, double down on physicality or return to their speed and skill roots. For Florida, the formula was simple. Stick to what's working: discipline, pressure, and opportunism. The Panthers had proven they could handle Edmonton's physicality and keep their cool. Officiating would be under scrutiny, with early penalties likely as referees tried to keep control. A tightly called game could open the door for Edmonton's power play, but Florida's structure remained their biggest weapon. Game 4 would test both teams' composure and adaptability. Would Edmonton learn from their mistakes or fall into the same trap? The legacy of this final would be decided by which team could manage its emotions and seize the moment.